Ladies and gentlemen, in the depths of the human soul, there lies a silent struggle, the fading of individuality. In a world that increasingly values sameness, efficiency, and collective identity over uniqueness, many people find themselves adrift, unsure of who they are beneath the roles, expectations, and external labels imposed on them. The loss of individuality in psychology is not just a theoretical concept. It is a profound and painful experience that affects the heart, mind, and spirit of countless individuals. This loss begins subtly. A child learns early to behave in a way that earns approval. A teenager hides their real feelings to be accepted by their peers. An adult buries dreams under the pressure of duty and routine. Slowly, without realizing it, the authentic self recedes into the shadows. What remains is a socially constructed version of the person, compliant, predictable, and disconnected from their true essence. Psychology has long recognized that the suppression of individuality leads to inner conflict. When we betray who we really are for the sake of fitting in, we create a split within the psyche. One part continues to perform, to pretend, to exist outwardly. The other part, the soul, grows restless. Depression, anxiety, and emptiness are often not signs of weakness, but spiritual signals that the soul is tired of the mask. These are not just mental health issues. They are calls from the self to return to wholeness. Carl Jung emphasized the importance of individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are. This is not a selfish journey, but a sacred one. True individuality does not isolate, it liberates. It allows a person to live in harmony with both the inner world and the outer world. It enables someone to contribute authentically, love deeply, and walk confidently in their divine purpose. Without individuality, life becomes mechanical. We may succeed outwardly, but inwardly we are dying. This psychological loss often comes with spiritual consequences. When people forget who they are, they also lose touch with the one who created them. The divine spark within us, that whisper of God's voice, becomes harder to hear under the noise of cultural conformity. But even in the midst of that silence, the Spirit does not leave us. It patiently waits for us to wake up. Healing begins when we dare to face ourselves, to peel away the layers, and to rediscover the person God intended us to be. Real life stories reflect this truth. A woman who spent her life pleasing everyone finally realized she had never asked herself what she truly wanted. A man who chased financial success found himself spiritually bankrupt. Their turning point came not from external success, but from the pain of losing themselves. And in that pain, they turned inward, not to escape, but to remember. The path back to individuality requires courage. It demands honesty, reflection, and often solitude. It requires us to break the cycle of people pleasing, to silence the inner critic, and to embrace the parts of us we've long buried. But the reward is freedom, not the freedom to do whatever we want, but the freedom to be who we were created to be. There is divine power in reclaiming your individuality. When you live from the core of your being, you walk in truth. You no longer seek validation from the world because you know your worth comes from above. You speak, act, love, and create from a place of alignment. You become rare in a world of copies, and most importantly, you become whole. This is not just psychological recovery. It is spiritual resurrection. The loss of individuality is not final, it is an invitation. An invitation to come home to yourself, to heal, and to live again, fully alive and unapologetically you. Deep within the human psyche lies a mysterious and often hidden aspect of ourselves that Carl Jung called the shadow self. It is the part of us we are taught to deny, the raw, authentic emotions, desires, and instincts that society labels as unacceptable. When discussing the loss of individuality, we must begin here because it is the shadow that holds the keys to our forgotten self. As long as we suppress or ignore this inner world, we risk living a life that is only half, real a life shaped by expectations, roles, and borrowed identities. Jung believed that the shadow is not inherently evil. It is simply the part of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. It includes fear, anger, envy, but also strength, creativity, and passion, things that, when left unexamined, distort our behavior. When we push these aspects into the unconscious, they don't disappear. They shape our thoughts and decisions from the background, leaving us feeling hollow, reactive, and disconnected. Over time, this disconnection becomes a form of self-abandonment, a slow erosion of individuality. Imagine a man who has always been told to be polite, quiet, and agreeable. He grows into adulthood constantly pleasing others, always avoiding conflict. But beneath the surface, resentment builds. His shadow, filled with unexpressed truth, grows stronger. Eventually, he may explode in anger or fall into depression, not understanding why. It is not that he became someone else, it is that he ignored who he truly was for too long. Now consider a woman who grew up believing her worth was in being beautiful or accommodating. She silences her opinions, her ambition, her intellect, all to maintain an image. Yet deep inside, her soul aches for more. Her individuality has been buried beneath years of performance. The shadow, in this case, might carry her unspoken dreams, her rage, her longing for freedom. And unless she confronts that shadow, she may never fully know herself. The process of facing the shadow is not easy. It requires bravery. It asks you to confront what you've been avoiding, but this is where true healing begins. When you meet your shadow with compassion instead of judgment, you start reclaiming the parts of you that were lost. This integration is not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming whole. And wholeness is the foundation of real individuality. When we avoid the shadow, we create a false self, a version of ourselves we think will be accepted. But this self is brittle. It cannot withstand life's storms. The loss of individuality often comes from trying to be what others want instead of who God created us to be. But when we turn inward and meet our shadow with the light of truth and faith, something miraculous happens. The parts of us that were once shameful or feared become sources of wisdom and strength. This journey is deeply spiritual. Scripture tells us, the truth will set you free. That includes the truth about who you are, not just the polished surface, but the complex, beautiful soul within. Divine healing doesn't come from pretending. It comes from stepping into the fullness of your humanity and allowing grace to restore what has been broken. So if you feel lost, if you feel like you've been living someone else's life, it's time to look inward. Not to escape, but to encounter. Meet your shadow, listen to its pain, understand its message, then surrender it to God's healing power. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be honest. And in that honesty, your individuality will begin to rise again, stronger, wiser, and rooted in truth. Let your healing begin, not by denying the shadow, but by embracing it as the pathway back to your true self. In the battle between conformity and individuality, a quiet war rages within every soul. From the moment we are born, the world begins to shape us. Parents correct us, schools mold us, peers pressure us, and society hands us a script. We're taught what to think, how to act, what to wear, who to be, and slowly, often without resistance, we begin to trade our uniqueness for acceptance. This exchange might seem harmless at first, just a small compromise here or there. But over time, it grows into a life lived more for others than for oneself. That's when individuality begins to die. Conformity offers comfort. It promises belonging and predictability. It allows us to move through life without questioning too much, without standing out, without drawing attention. But the price is steep. When you conform too long, you forget who you were before the world told you who to be. You lose touch with your inner voice, the part of you that dreams, feels deeply, and dares to break the mold. You begin to wear masks that smile when you're hurting and say yes when your soul cries no. Jung understood this deeply. He believed that every individual carries a unique inner truth, a potential that cannot be found anywhere else in the universe. And yet, modern life pushes us towards sameness. It celebrates fitting in more than standing out. The individual is often sacrificed at the altar of collective norms, trends, and ideologies. In such a world, conformity can feel like safety, but it is a safety that starves the soul. The loss of individuality is more than a psychological crisis. It is a spiritual one. It disconnects us from our purpose. You cannot fulfill your divine calling while living someone else's life. You cannot know the joy of authenticity while trapped in the roles others have written for you. When you choose conformity over individuality, you deny the sacred design of your being. But there is hope. The journey back to individuality begins the moment you question what no longer feels true. It begins when you stop asking, "What will they think?" and start asking, "What do I believe?" It's not about rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It's about truth, your truth, the one that God placed within you before you ever took your first breath. Real freedom comes when you stop chasing the approval of the crowd and begin honoring the voice within. That voice may lead you on a path no one else understands. It may cost you popularity, comfort, or even relationships. But what you gain is priceless: peace, clarity, integrity, and purpose. History is filled with those who dared to be different. Saints, artists, prophets, and visionaries. They were not conformists. They were individuals who listened to something deeper than the noise of the world. They were rare, and they were real. You were created to be one of them, not to mimic, but to shine in your own light. If you feel lost, it may be because you've been living someone else's version of your life. It's time to come home to yourself. Start by asking, what do I love? What do I fear? What do I believe? What parts of me have I buried for the sake of fitting in? And then pray. Ask God to breathe life into your truth again. Ask for courage to let go of the false self and embrace who you were always meant to be. You were not made to conform. You were made to transform through truth, through faith, and through the reclaiming of your sacred individuality. Self-awareness and identity are the cornerstones of a meaningful life. Without them, we drift. We imitate, absorb, and reflect everything around us: culture, family, media, until we become a mosaic of others' expectations rather than a mirror of our soul. The journey of discovering who we are is not one that begins in the crowd. It begins in silence. It begins in stillness. It begins when we dare to look inward instead of outward. Many people never take that journey. They wear identities like costumes, switching them out based on what the world applauds. But deep down, a quiet unrest grows, a sacred discontent. That's the soul's way of telling you, you are not being true to yourself. And without self-awareness, you won't even notice that something's missing. You'll just feel tired, uninspired, disconnected. That is the cost of neglecting identity. Self-awareness isn't just thinking about yourself. It is the courage to observe your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions, and your motivations without judgment. It is the wisdom to ask, why do I believe this? Why do I feel this way? Is this truly me? Or is this what I was told to be? It is peeling back the layers until only truth remains, even if that truth is painful, especially if it is painful, because only when you face the truth can you be free, and the truth is, many of us build our identities out of fear. Fear of being unloved, fear of standing alone, fear of not being enough. We hide behind jobs, roles, relationships, and even religion, anything to avoid the deep work of knowing ourselves. But you can't walk in your divine purpose if you don't know who you are. And you cannot know who you are until you make peace with your past, your pain, your story. There comes a time when you must stand still and face yourself. That's when self-awareness becomes a holy confrontation. It is the moment you meet the shadow parts, the pieces you've denied, the wounds you've avoided, the truths you've buried, and it's terrifying, but it's also liberating, because on the other side of that fear is identity. Authentic, powerful, God-breathed identity. God never called you to blend in. He called you to be set apart. That's why the world's applause will never satisfy your soul. You weren't made to perform. You were made to be. Your worth is not in your mask, it's in your maker, and He crafted every detail of your identity with intentionality and love. To walk in self-awareness is to walk with God, to see yourself through His eyes, not the distorted lens of culture. The loss of individuality is a tragedy, but it's also an invitation to return to your true self, the self you were before the world taught you to doubt, the self that remembers joy, dreams, creativity, and courage. That self is not gone, it's just waiting for your attention, waiting for your love, waiting for your permission to rise. So here is your call to action. Get quiet, listen deeply, write, pray. Reflect, ask yourself the hard questions, let go of borrowed identities, reclaim your name. There's no formula, only faith. But as you walk this path, you will feel a shift, not instantly, but inevitably. You will begin to feel whole again. You will begin to feel real. You are not who the world told you to be. You are who God created you to become. That journey, the one from imitation to authenticity, from performance to presence, is the journey of the soul. Take it, not because it's easy, but because it's sacred, and because you are worth knowing fully, deeply, eternally. Psychological awakening is not a moment of sudden bliss or external transformation. It is the deep and often painful realization that much of what you thought was *U* was never really *U* at all. It is the moment when the mask begins to crack, when the noise of the world becomes unbearable, and when the quiet voice within begins to rise. That voice, once drowned out by the expectations of society, family, tradition, and fear, starts to whisper the truth. And that truth is your soul's cry for freedom. For many, this awakening begins in crisis. A relationship ends, a job loses meaning, a sense of purpose begins to slip away, and instead of running from the discomfort, you start asking questions. Who am I beneath all this? What do I truly value? Why do I feel so disconnected? These questions mark the beginning of psychological awakening, the sacred unraveling of false identity, and the courageous pursuit of your true self. The loss of individuality is the quiet tragedy of modern life. From a young age, we are shaped, molded, and conditioned. We learn how to fit in, how to gain approval, how to survive. But in the process, we often abandon our inner world. We become experts in outer performance, but strangers to our inner landscape. We learn how to meet expectations, but forget how to dream, how to feel, how to be. Awakening breaks that cycle. It doesn't offer quick answers or easy peace, but it offers something better, the possibility of truth. The moment you realize that you are not your roles, your image, your achievements, that's when the work begins. Because real awakening isn't passive. It's active, deliberate, and brave. It requires you to turn inward, to confront your pain, to name your wounds, and to reclaim your power. And this awakening is not separate from God. In fact, it is where your spiritual and psychological life meet. The moment you begin to face your shadow, the unhealed, hidden parts of you, is the moment divine light starts to shine through your cracks. Not to shame you, but to heal you, not to condemn you, but to call you forward. Psychological awakening is the soul's rebellion against conformity. It is the fire that burns through illusions and makes space for authenticity. And it is the only path to a life of meaning. Without awakening, we live asleep, functional but not alive, busy but not fulfilled. With awakening, we begin to move in alignment with something higher. We begin to walk in our divine assignment, but this journey requires humility. It requires silence, reflection, honesty, and prayer. It requires letting go of who you think you should be, and becoming who you really are, the person God has been calling you to become all along. That person may not be perfect. That person may carry wounds, but that person is whole and free and real. The awakening is not just for the few. It is for anyone who dares to listen, anyone who grows tired of playing roles, anyone who feels the holy discomfort of living a life that doesn't match their soul. If you're there now, in the in-between, in the breaking, in the wilderness, know this: you are not lost, you are waking up. So don't run from this process. Embrace it, nurture it, walk slowly and trust deeply. What you will find is not just a new self, but your true self, the self that has always been there beneath the noise. And in that self, you will find God, you will find peace, and you will find the strength to live, not just as a reflection of others, but as the radiant original you were always meant to be. Spiritual individuality is not simply the pursuit of being different. It is the courageous journey of becoming whole. It is the sacred commitment to live from the core of your being, guided not by the voices of society, fear, or conformity, but by the quiet, divine call within. It means choosing authenticity over approval, purpose over performance, and soul over social expectation. It is the recognition that your life was not meant to be a copy of someone else's. You were designed by God to carry a unique light that no one else can offer this world. In a time where blending in is safer and easier, spiritual individuality is a revolutionary act. It requires deep inner work. It asks you to face the truth of who you are and who you are not. It asks you to sift through the layers of conditioning, pain, and pride and ask, what was I created for? What truth lives inside of me that I've been too afraid to express? The world often teaches us to silence that truth. From early childhood, we are rewarded for being obedient, agreeable, and predictable. We are taught to follow the crowd, to measure our worth by external validation, to keep our wildness tucked away. But the soul was never meant to live caged. The soul longs for freedom, expression, and divine alignment, and when we suppress it long enough, we begin to feel anxious, lost, or deeply unfulfilled. That's not dysfunction. It's your spirit crying out to be reclaimed. Spiritual individuality is the answer to that cry. It is saying yes to the inner voice of God that whispers, "You were not made to be like them. You were made to be you." That whisper may feel uncomfortable, even dangerous, because being spiritually individual often requires letting go of things the world celebrates: status, popularity, sameness, and sometimes even relationships that can't handle your truth. But what you receive in return is far greater: peace, purpose, clarity, and divine power. The loss of individuality, as seen in society, is not just a psychological problem, it is a spiritual wound. When we abandon our uniqueness, we grieve the Holy Spirit that crafted us with divine intention. God doesn't make duplicates, He makes originals. He doesn't call you to fit into a mold, He calls you to break it. Every spiritual giant in history had to walk alone before they walked in their calling. Moses, David, Esther, Jesus. They each stood apart before they stood in power, and so must you. Spiritual individuality doesn't mean isolation. It means alignment. It means standing firmly in who God created you to be, even if the world misunderstands you. It means trusting that your intuition is not madness, but divine guidance. It means embracing your path, even when it looks nothing like the paths of those around you. It means realizing that your difference is your ministry, your uniqueness is your anointing, and your truth is your testimony. But you must have courage to unlearn what no longer fits, courage to sit in silence and hear God, courage to trust that your inner world is sacred, courage to walk a narrow path that others may never understand. And most importantly, courage to forgive yourself for all the years you tried to be someone else. This is your awakening. This is your rebirth. This is your return to yourself and to the God who shaped you in the secret place. So I challenge you, stop hiding, stop shrinking, stop mimicking, rise in the fullness of who you are. Speak the truth that burns in your bones. Live the story that only you can live. Because when you walk in spiritual individuality, you don't just find yourself. You find God walking with you, within you, and ahead of you. And in that sacred walk, you become unstoppable. Inner self-discovery is not a luxury, it is a necessity. In a world that constantly demands conformity, that rewards external achievement over internal truth, and that praises performance over presence, discovering who you truly are becomes a revolutionary act. It is the sacred work of peeling away the layers of expectations, roles, and identities that were never truly yours to begin with. It is the process of remembering the self that existed before the world told you who to be. Many people go their entire lives wearing masks. They become so accustomed to pleasing others, so used to suppressing their authentic voice, that they begin to believe the persona they've created is who they really are. But deep inside, the soul longs for something more, something real. That ache, that quiet dissatisfaction, that feeling of being off or disconnected is not failure. It is a divine signal. It is the inner self calling you home. True inner self-discovery is often triggered by suffering, a job loss, a heartbreak, a spiritual crisis, a moment where the life you've built no longer makes sense. At first, it feels like destruction. But in reality, it is the sacred beginning, because you cannot discover your true self until the false self begins to fall apart. Pain becomes the doorway, silence becomes the teacher, stillness becomes the path. This process is not easy. It requires courage to be alone with your thoughts. It demands honesty to confront the parts of you that are wounded, afraid, or angry. It takes faith to believe there is something worth finding beneath all the rubble. But once you begin the journey, you quickly realize the soul has always been waiting for you. It never left. It was simply buried under years of noise. Inner self-discovery is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you've always been. It's about hearing your own voice in a world full of opinions. It's about making choices not from fear, but from alignment. It's about no longer needing to prove yourself, because you finally know your worth comes from within, not from applause, not from titles, not from fitting in. Carl Jung described this as individuation, the process by which a person becomes a whole, unified self. Not by imitating others, but by integrating all aspects of who they are, the light and the shadow, the masculine and the feminine, the conscious and the unconscious. It's a psychological process, yes, but also deeply spiritual. Because in discovering yourself, you discover the image of God within you. This is not selfish work. In fact, the more you know yourself, the more deeply you can love others. The more rooted you are in your truth, the more space you create for others to do the same. Inner self-discovery gives you clarity, peace, and purpose. It frees you from the endless cycle of comparison and competition. It empowers you to live with integrity and conviction. If you feel lost right now, that's okay. You are not broken, you are awakening. If you feel disconnected, know that your soul is reaching for something higher. If everything in your life feels like it's falling apart, perhaps it's falling into place. Don't run from this process, embrace it, spend time in silence, journal, pray, ask hard questions, listen more than you speak, let go of the need to be understood by everyone, seek God in the stillness. Trust that every layer you shed brings you closer to your truth. And know this, the world doesn't need another copy. It needs you, the real you, the awakened you, the one who remembers that before the world shaped you, God already called you good. You are not here to live someone else's story. You are here to live your own, and the journey begins now, within. From the moment we are born, we begin to absorb the world around us, its expectations, rules, and judgments. We learn quickly what brings approval and what brings shame. We are praised for obedience, for fitting in, for behaving properly. And slowly, often without realizing it, we begin to construct a version of ourselves that is acceptable to the world. This version is what Jung called the asterisk persona asterisk, the social mask we wear to navigate life. It helps us belong, but if we cling to it too tightly, we lose touch with who we truly are. The authentic self is not concerned with appearances. It does not seek validation. It is the part of us that existed before the world gave us a name, a label, or a set of instructions. It is raw, unfiltered, and deeply sacred. But in a society that rewards surface-level perfection over inner truth, the authentic self often gets buried beneath layers of performance. The tragedy of this is that many people live their entire lives as strangers to themselves. They succeed according to society's standards. They build careers, families, reputations. Yet inside they feel empty. Why? Because everything they've built was shaped by the mask, not the soul. They wake up one day and realize they have spent years being someone they never truly were. This disconnect leads to a loss of individuality. We stop asking, "What do I want?" and instead ask, "What should I want?" We stop dreaming our own dreams and start chasing someone else's idea of success. Our voices are drowned out by the noise of expectation. Our passions are silenced by fear of judgment. Our truth becomes something we hide even from ourselves. But the authentic self never disappears. It waits. It watches. It whispers in moments of stillness. It shows up in dreams, in art, in quiet longings, and deep sadness. It aches to be remembered. And when the mask starts to crack through heartbreak, burnout, or spiritual crisis, the authentic self begins to rise. This rising is not easy. It demands honesty. It asks us to confront the ways we've betrayed ourselves. It may mean walking away from relationships, careers, or identities that no longer serve us. It means being misunderstood. It means standing alone, but it is only through this courageous return to the self that we can truly live. The journey from the social mask to the authentic self is not selfish, it is sacred. Because when you live as your true self, you don't just free yourself, you give others permission to do the same. You become a mirror, a light, a living example of what it means to live in truth. And that truth has the power to heal not only your own soul, but the world around you. This journey is deeply spiritual. It requires faith, not just in God, but in the self that God created. You were not made to blend in. You were not made to perform. You were made to embody something holy and unique. When you reconnect with your authentic self, you reconnect with the divine image within you. That's where your power lives. That's where your peace is found. So take off the mask. Sit with the discomfort. Ask the hard questions. Embrace the parts of you that the world told you to hide. Let your soul breathe again, because the world does not need more perfectly curated personas. It needs more whole, awakened souls. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be real. You are not here to conform. You are here to become. The authentic self is your birthright. Claim it, live it, and watch how everything changes.